online job boards and those kinds of things, um, to help with the initial search. So, for example, if I put out a role for an executive assistant, 400 people applied, AI would do the initial sift because it would be taught to look for certain keywords or phrases that were the key requirements or the mandatory requirements. So if you didn't have, for example, AI knowledge somewhere in your CV or your job application, you could be sifted out by AI. So those are the kinds of applications that have been using it for a long time. Another one which is very commonplace for us, we go to Tesco's, we go to Sainsbury's, we've got our Nectar card, our Tesco points card.
Mm.
That is an AI engine driving that because it analyzes your purchase history and it decides that, you know, you buy this certain type of apples or lettuce every week and you have done for 6 months. So AI does two things with that piece of information. It gives you vouchers to buy that at a cheaper price or a discount or a benefit. Also, AI is analyzing the shopping habits of all its people. And what that does is the supermarket then can do what's called just-in-time purchasing. Because instead of having to buy 400 million lettuces, they know that in December they might only sell 10 lettuces. So AI has analysed that data and it enables them to minimise the amount of waste on fresh food. So that's how it's being used in that sort of thing. So moving on from that, I want to really talk about what is AI, right? What actually is AI? So let's start off with generative AI. This is the one that a lot of people think about when they mean AI, right? So here you're thinking about ChatGPT and the various models there. You're thinking about DAL-E, Midjourney, those generative ones that are creating images for you. Audio generation, things like Dukebot, MuseNet. Video generation, you're talking about the text to chat bots and things like that that generate something. Then we've got what's called a large language model. Those are the kind of more advanced versions of GPT. They're the ones that you train. So it's things like Roberta, Albert, Claude. You put content in them, or content is drawn from the internet and it trains them to give you answers. And another model recently that's come out is the Llama model. Llama belongs to Meta, Facebook. Well, Facebook have taken all of the data from Facebook and Instagram and all of this, and they've used that to train their model, amongst other pieces of data that they've got in there. Machine and supervised learning. Now we're getting into the really izzy-wizzy technical kind of stuff here. And machine learning is all about algorithms. It's all about just training it, but it's using those algorithms to do some really complex calculations. Typically, you might see these algorithms evaluating large pieces of data, medical research, for example, where they might be testing all sorts of samples. They bring all that data together. A human being might take hours, days, weeks, months, and an algorithm might be able to bring that down very, very quickly. One of the areas that I know that they are kind of using some of the machine learning and some of the deep learning is there is a project in the NHS which is reviewing mammograms and breast cancer. And what they're doing is they are anonymizing all these scans that they've got and looking at patterns and trends and analyzing the data to improve services for people with breast cancer and to help with early detection. So AI can be really, really fabulous, and that sort of thing. So the difference between those machine supervised deep learning, this sort of things like neural networks, which are interconnected computing codes that assess, evaluate, and rapidly undertake functions. That they are probably beyond where us as VAs and consultants will ever go. Another place that these are used a lot is defence, for analysing vast amounts of let's say covert supervision. So places like GCHQ and those kinds of things, where they might be supervising somebody's activities. We're talking terrorism, we're talking all those things that we really don't want to think about, but some people do, and it's making life easier for them to detect and prevent the big scale incidents. Most of what we do is going to be in generative AI and the large language models. Okay. So let's get into the really sexy bit. Regulation. This is where I like. So we need to think about GDPR. Okay. We should all know by now what GDPR is, what it means, what it requires of us as business owners. The EU AI Act, this is active. Now, as VAs, I don't want you to worry about this because it's quite unlikely in your roles that the EU AI Act is going to require you to do anything. But I just wanted to mention it and give you a little brief on it because you may have clients that need to understand it. So the EU AI Act classifies risk around the use of AI. Most of the people who are going to need to worry about this are organizations like Meta, who are creating their models, right? And they have got to address the risks around dodgy data, results, which data goes in, and those kinds of things. You're talking about significant risk to individuals, privacy, personal data, those kinds of things. So as you can see, it's much, much higher up, but it's important we know that that's coming. Global AI regulation. Oh my gosh, there is so much. One of the leading countries on this, surprisingly, is the United States. There is some deep worry about AI in the United States. Now, I'm going to caveat what I'm saying here with the fact that we've recently had an election in the United States and a change of government. So what I knew yesterday, last week, last month about the status of regulation in the US may well change post-January. So we'll kind of park that there for now. However, there are other countries that are looking at AI regulation. Might not be relevant in the UK, but if you have a client in a country, that might be relevant. So we might need to just kind of keep an eye on it rather than rush to try and fix anything today. We also need to think about PECA, Privacy and Electronic Communications Regulations. This is the one that covers our cookies, our email marketing, and those kinds of things. As we go through the presentation today, we'll be talking about data and we'll sort of tag in how that's kind of linked to those. So it's just an awareness. And I wanted to do a quick jargon reminder as we go through here. So what is personal data? That's anything about a living individual that will identify them. And it could be a combination of things. So for example, my name, Jo Brianti, if that's out on the internet, there could be lots of other Jo Briantis in the world. But if you combine Jo Brianti with my email address, that makes it a unique identifier because I can be identified in that way. There are two types of personal data. There is the general name, email, address. Then there is the sensitive personal data, remember. There is the finance, the health, the ID data, and those kinds of things. And that's the kind of data that we need to give additional protection to, generally under GDPR. We'll talk about that in terms of AI as we go through. Data subject, that's me, that's you, that's every living individual. And we all have rights with regard to our personal data. As business owners, we have to comply with GDPR to protect the individual data subject rights for the individuals that we process data about. Data controller, that's normally the business owner, or in bigger businesses, it could be the head of finance or the head of marketing or something, but it is the named person who is responsible for the data protection and processes in the business related to data and data processing. The data processor, that could be you as a VA doing what your client tells you. In the VA world, you are a controller because you have your own business, but you're also a processor because you do what you're told by your client with regard to the data that they run in the business. Okay. So let's get into some of the really sexy bits now. The AI risks. One of the things that I didn't put on here was the risk of copyright issues. So I just wanted to sort of talk a little bit about that. If you create an image, if you create a blog, if you create music with AI, you need to be very careful that you have looked at the terms and conditions for that AI tool to ensure that you know who owns the copyright. Now, here's why. If I'm writing a blog for you as my client, the copyright of what I've written in your contract will transfer potentially from me to you when there's payment or against the terms and conditions. If I use an AI tool and I don't own the copyright because I've used the AI tool to write the content or to create the image, I cannot pass that AI, that copyright on to my client. Now, at the moment, there is kind of a lot of stuff going on in the intellectual property world around AI and copyright issues. So just think carefully about that issue. And for transparency, you need to be clear and your contracts need to be clear, your booking forms or however you're managing your relationship, you need to be clear and you need to have a conversation with your clients about what am I using AI for? How am I using AI? And the first question is, are you happy for me to use AI in my business? Because I use it like this. Okay. So that's one of the risks. Deep fakes. There's a lot of those. Social media is awash with them. And of course, in the recent United States election process, there was the world famous deep fake where Taylor Swift endorsed one of the candidates. That was a fake. It was an AI generated fake. But there are other types of deep fakes out there. Some of them are put out there by what I think the term is bad actors, rogue states to try and influence people's thinking and processes, and it goes down into that conspiracy kind of world. Be aware of it. In this AI driven world, you need to become an expert at fact checking, right? So if somebody sends you something on social media or by email, no longer can you take that as gospel. You need to go back to the source and you need to check. AI slop, what a great word that is, isn't it? Slop. And that's it's exactly what it says. It's kind of rubbish. It's the algorithms producing a whole load of nonsense content. And again, it's about the people who are going to be successful with AI are those who have critical thinking skills, who are fact checking, and don't just reshare whatever is coming through on the internet. Okay. Hallucinations. Again, this is incorrect or misleading content generated by AI. And one of the things that happens with AI in these models is they get confused. They get confused because A says one thing, B says another. You've given them a prompt and asked them a question, and A and B's data doesn't match. So they come up with some sort of gobbledygook, or they make it up themselves. So it's driven by inappropriate, ineffective data. So there's not been enough data in there to train the model to talk to you, to give you accurate information. Okay. Hype and pace. Well, there's certainly a lot of pace at the moment. Every single person out there at the moment is talking AI. Everybody is suddenly an AI expert, because they've been on a 3-week course and, they can now deliver AI. And the hype around AI, everybody is talking AI, and that can create problems because people lack confidence, people are worried about it. People are concerned it's going to take their jobs, reduce their businesses, and those kinds of things. Go with it. Don't be afraid of AI. Go at your own pace. Do what feels right for you. Ask questions. You know where I am. You know where Gwen is. You know where people are who have knowledge. And if I don't have the answer, I can either find out, or I can kind of access experts to bring in to help you with that. Black box decision making. This is the one that specifically is linked to GDPR because it's all about that automated decision making. It's all about those scenarios that I talked about with recruitment. If you or your clients become involved in this automated decision making process, and you can buy AI tools off the shelf now that will do this for you, you need to ensure that your processes include human intervention here, because that's a GDPR requirement. Okay. Bias, stereotypes, offensive content. You've only got to have somebody who is racist, misogynist, all the ists, the isms in the background programming the algorithms or the tools, and you can very quickly get a large language model or an AI tool that suddenly excludes anybody, for example, with a disability, because I've got an ism around disabled people. Or, I can exclude Afro-Caribbean people because I don't like that particular type of person. Or could be I don't want blonde people because I don't like blonde hair. I mean, it's all of these things that you can program, and it's all in that bias and stereotype. Another very typical one, and I saw this recently, was people talking about the stereotype about women being at home with their children and not working. I mean, let's face it, ladies, and I don't know if we've got any gents here, so sorry if we have, but for a long time we've been fighting against that stereotype that we should, you know, be at home with the children all the time and not work and all of those things. You can code, you can develop within AI all of those things. And offensive content, I mean, the mind boggles with what's out there on the internet, you know, and I'm sure I don't need to kind of go into that little wormhole for you to understand that the kind of stuff that AI can generate around this and can be taught to generate and can be taught to seek out across the internet and go to those really dark places of despair. So let's have a little think about the legal basis for processing. So now we're going to drill into GDPR, right? And to process personal data, you need to have a legal basis for processing. Now, I'm only going to talk about 4 of them because the others are not, I don't believe, relevant in our world. So the first thing is I've got a legal obligation to process personal data in my business. Prime example is I have to process finance data for HMRC, my legal obligation to produce tax and to hold those records. How does AI fit? And I don't have an answer here for you guys because I'm prompting you to think about what this looks like in your business, right? I know what it looks like in my business. Xero has an AI engine in it now. I don't know about QuickBooks because I don't use it or any of these others, but I know because I use Xero that it's got AI in it. Is that impacting my legal obligation? I don't know. Those kinds of things. Contracts. In your contract with your clients, you need to, as I mentioned earlier, what AI am I allowed to use while I'm working for you in your systems? Are you using AI? How do you want me to use AI? All of those questions, make sure you've got them in the contract. Coffee Clutch contracts are AI ready. They have the relevant clauses in there to protect you and the client. Likewise, between you and your associates, what are you going to allow your associates to do with AI to deliver services for you or for your client? If your client says no AI, how are you ensuring and tracking and managing and the contracting with your associate that what they are going to do reflects what your client wants? And how is that protecting data? Because again, this is in the backdrop of privacy and your GDPR requirements. Do you have a legitimate interest to process the data with AI? Some of the tools, such as, let's say, things like Active Campaign, MailerLite, HIT, as it is now, ConvertKit, Constant Contact, some of those tools are bringing AI into them. So AI is processing personal data in those systems. If you're using legitimate interest, how are you logging that in the assessment that AI is there? How are you managing that? Are you thinking about that? And finally, this is the big one, right? Consent, right? You ask people to consent to sign up to your marketing list. Are you informing them that you are using AI? Who's updated their privacy policy to say that they're using AI? Have any of you got an AI statement that says, this is what AI is, this is what I'm doing with it, this is how we use it in the business, I will be transparent about it, I will use it ethically. I will not use it to process your personal data, all those kinds of things. Now, I've got a sample of an AI statement. I'm in the middle of drafting one, so I'm happy to spend some time talking with people about that separately to today. But you need to think about your consent. Do you need to be updating how you manage consent to allow people to consent to having their data used in your AI tools? Do you need people to consent for you to use AI? If you're not planning to use AI on personal data, you don't need any of all of these things that I've talked about. But you do need to do that contract piece around, what am I using AI for? Does my client want me to use AI? Okay. So let's talk about the management. So GDPR introduced something called an accountability framework. And the accountability framework is around how you, as the business owner or the data controller, actively manage the data in your business. Where does AI fit into that in your business? If AI is being used to process personal data, if some of the tools you use have introduced AI and you've activated that, what needs to be updated in your GDPR processes, your policies, your documentation, your notices? Are your contracts up to date and saying that you're talking about AI? The DPIA process, this is about your risk management. Now, anybody who adopts AI, specifically if they are using AI for personal data, should undertake what is called a data processing impact assessment. And it's about you assessing the risk. If anybody needs the link to some information on the DPIA, I can give you that. But essentially in there, you need to understand, what are the risks to my client, to my associate, to the personal data that I'm processing if I adopt this AI tool, if I put this data into this large language model. And that could be chat, could be Claude, could be Perplexity, could be, there's dozens of them out there. Okay. The ROPA, the record of processing activities. A coffee clutch, it's the posh name, right? That's the legal legislative name. In Coffee Clutch, we call it the data inventory or the data audit. Now, it is a mandatory activity for you to have one of these documents. And you should know and understand what data you're collecting, what data type. Is it ordinary data? Is it sensitive personal data? And every single one of you will potentially have some sensitive data, even if that is only bank details to pay your associates, or you're accepting invoices in because they've got bank details on them. So there is a little bit in every business. How are you indicating on your ROPA that AI is involved? Are you tracking these tools that you've adopted and what you're using them for? Possibly not. Possibly. You need to think about how you do that for your business. And then there's people. And we've talked a lot about people. We've talked about our clients. We've talked about our associates. But we don't only have clients and associates. It's important. We've talked about the contracts there. But we go marketing, networking, and we collect business cards. We put them in our CRM system, and we build relationships with people by, sort of things I do is, I get an email in from somewhere and I forward that on to Gwen and I say, hey, Gwen, you might be interested in this. I'm not trying to sell Gwen anything. It's just the relationship building as part of networking and all of those things. Do you need to be transparent about how you're using AI in your broader business operations? I don't know. I don't know how you're running your businesses. So I'm putting these questions out there because you need to go away and think about what you're doing with all of these things. Okay. So the commercial effect, getting it wrong, GDPR generally getting it wrong will cause all of these problems. Add AI into that, and it could. I haven't yet seen any fines or sort of sanctions or anything by the ICO around AI. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that anybody on this call or listening to the replay is suddenly going to get a visit from the ICO to check on their AI and their GDPR or anything like that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the ICO that come knocking at your door. If a client or a customer or somebody you network with thinks you're doing something wrong with their data, and they then complain to the ICO about that, where does that leave you? Are you ready for that? Can you manage that? What are the answers to that? Have you got everything you need in place? And you might not get those massive fines that everybody was talking about, the 20 million euros. No. But let's say you get a 10, 15, 20, 30,000 pound fine. That could destroy your business because that's a lot of money for a small business. Imagine if you have an issue and you have to talk to people, you have to tell people, what's that going to do to the reputation of your business, the trust you've built up with people? Audits, due diligence. How often are you auditing your business generally about what you do with the data and thinking about your adoption of AI? Now is the time to look at the audit, do the due diligence. Don't just sign up for these tools without having a look at the terms and conditions. Or if you're stuck with that, you know where I am. Let's have a chat about that. Now, there's a positive thing here about client acquisition and retention. Being honest and open about your GDPR, your AI use, how you're protecting somebody's data is going to build your reputation and trust. It is going to help you with your client acquisition and retention because you can go out there and you can tell the world, I am doing this ethically. I am being transparent. I am being honest. My contracts are honest with you because I'm not hiding the fact that I'm doing X and Y and Z. Okay. And finally, remember, privacy is a managed process. It is not the policy on your website. It is not policy that you've got hidden in your OneDrive, SharePoint, or Google Drive. It is an actively managed process, and it is an obligation for you to manage it. Now, what I suggest to people that I work with is that they do a routine evaluation of their business around GDPR. So, for example, this is a prime time. We're all sitting there thinking about 2025 is coming. We sit down and we go through our plans. We look at that was my sales target for 2024. Have I met my sales target? Have my costs gone up? How many clients have I had? All of those businessy type review things. And we plan to change or make more sales, make more, whatever it is for 2025. What I would suggest that you do is every time you do a review like that, whether it's annual, quarterly, whatever, add a little bit of time on for GDPR, especially in this world of AI, and look at what has changed in your business. Have you changed from MailChimp to MailerLite? In which case, do you need to update your ROPA? Do you need to update your privacy policy? Do you need to update information that you give to clients because you're using different tools? Have you suddenly added a newsletter in when you didn't have one before? Are you now using, for argument's sake, it's a bit random, but are you using TikTok? Are you using AI tools to manage videos and recordings and transcribing in Otter or something like that? How does that impact you updating your processes and your policies and the transparency? It is being transparent that is going to build your reputation and build the trust with the people that you connect with as clients, as associates, and in networking. And that's it. So, floor is open for questions or observations or worries or whatever. So, let's go.
Thank you, Jo. Thank you so much. That was really, really helpful. And there's a lot there that I'm sure even I haven't thought of as well. So, yeah, it's a bit of a minefield. There's no questions appeared yet. Please pop any of your questions in the chat. But to get you started, here's one. So we've obviously got the EU AI Act that has come in. As the UK is obviously no longer in the EU, can
Yes.
we expect a type of
Yes.
legislation for the UK to
Yes.
follow soon?
Yes. So I might get very excited about this. I'm sorry, ladies and gents, but next week I am going to spend the day with the Department of Trade and Industry, and we're going to talk about privacy regulation all day. I can't
Oh my
wait.
goodness.
Just so excited. They're even giving me lunch. Never mind about the lunch, right? I'm going to be networking with a lot of other privacy professionals and that sort of thing. And we're getting a briefing on AI regulation, changes to privacy regulation. So GDPR is an EU regulation. Post-Brexit, in the world we're in now, we have UK GDPR, we have EU GDPR. Prior to our election, when we still had a Conservative government, they had brought in a new data protection bill that was going to make some changes to UK GDPR. As soon as we went into that purdah where you can't talk about new regulation because of the election process, they made a choice about all of these pieces of legislation that they would rush through. The new data protection bill that they were talking about didn't make the cut at that point. Now that we have a new Labour government, they are doing some new UK privacy regulation. Okay. It's still in draft, so I'm not really talking broadly about it because there could be a long time before this becomes a piece of legislation where we need to think about it. But there is change coming. And there is an element of that new piece of legislation that's talking about AI. There is potential specific AI regulation coming in for the UK market. As a VA, if you're UK based, you will have to comply with all the UK regulations. If you have clients outside of the UK, if they're in the EU, you will have a set of regulations that they may have to comply with. You may have to consider those if they're relevant to your business, to your client. Also, I'm keeping an eye out on the United States because there's quite a bit going on there with privacy. If you've got US clients, that may, and it's not definite, and please don't think I'm saying you've suddenly got to become an expert in US legislation. You don't have to think about it at all unless you have clients or you have working relationships over there. But also with places like Australia, China, Korea, all talking about it. So legislation is coming and regulation is coming. And I will be keeping people up to date, dribbling it out. Connect with me on LinkedIn because I dribble stuff out there. You know, does that help?
It does. Thank you very much. So the next question is from Anna, and it's regarding AI transcription programs for taking minutes, obviously typing up transcriptions of various things. Before I put it to you, I will just say, because I offer audio typing as a service, and I work with a lot of solicitors doing inquests and things like that. They ask me to manually audio type it because of the high risk of special category data that's involved in that. But yeah, I would be interested too to hear your thoughts on the AI transcription programs. And notice in Zoom now there's also an AI summary as well that will give you a summary of the meeting. So yes.
So I'm going to take this back to the contract, right? What does your contract with the client say? That's the crux of this question, because I could have an AI transcription going on right now of this call, and it comes up at the beginning and it says this is being recorded. Everybody has to click OK. If they don't click OK, they've been warned and they've kind of accepted. But there's nothing in there that says about the AI transcription, because that automatically happens in your master settings. So there's a conversation to be had with your client. Are they happy for you to do transcription off an AI automated transcription for recording, offer, any of these things? Take it back to that. You've got to be aware about the data. So Gwen, you said that you're doing transcriptions for things like solicitors, for people like solicitors, who might be doing, I don't know, employment tribunal type stuff. They might be doing family law. They might, and then things like the autopsy reports and all of those kinds of things that you're transcribing. There is some highly, highly sensitive data in there. So you need to understand what the terms and conditions of the AI tool you're thinking about using are. What does it say in that tool about where that data goes? Right? So if it's transferring the data to a server in the United States, and it's the type of work that Gwen's doing on an autopsy or family law, something like that, I would caution against using it. But it comes down to your client. If you want to use one of these tools, you need to be aware of what type of data you're using, and then you have the conversation with your client. Now, Gwen could be saying to her client, I'm thinking of using this tool to do it, and it will speed things up and and I can then half my time, for example, or whatever. So the bill to you might be a little bit less. You have that conversation with the client. As Gwen has done, the solicitors have said, under no circumstances do you do that. I would rather pay you 10 hours and have the confidentiality. If her client said to her, do you know what, I'm okay with you chucking it into AI and knowing and understanding the implications of that, make sure that's written in your contract, make sure it's signed in your booking forms, and then go with it. This is about your transparency. So if you want to introduce these tools into your business, make sure you understand the terms and conditions. Make sure you know exactly what type of data is being proposed to put into the transcription, and then speak to the client. That's my advice, because it is for them to make the decision about their personal, or the personal data in their business that they're controlling. As individuals yourselves, you have to make a decision about how you use this in your business. But it comes back to that key thing about ethical business processes, about your integrity. There's nothing wrong with you using these tools, but you need to be open, you need to be transparent, you need to be telling your client, you need to be telling the person on the other side of the screen, this is being transcribed with AI. Are you okay with that? And maybe you have that conversation before the meeting so that, you can automatically switch off before you go into the meeting. Maybe that's part of your meeting process.
Right.
There's no one size fits all answer here. And until we get physical regulation that tells you what you must or must not do, it comes down to your own integrity, your ethics, being open and being transparent. GDPR requires you to be transparent about personal data. So you need to just step that up and be open, honest, transparent with the people in your business, your clients, your associates, people you network with, and anybody else whose data that you have. What are you doing with AI? Does that
Thanks,
help,
Jo.
Gwen?
Yes, absolutely. That's great. We've got a few questions coming in now. So just quickly, there was a couple of things that you said you'd send links over for. I've made a note of those. So
We can liaise with those, and when you send the replay, I'll
yeah,
make sure that you've got them to send with the replay.
lovely. Then you'll all get those links with the replay. So yes. Carrie, I totally identify with this. I remember when I was brand new and yep, so much to take in. So Carrie said, as a brand new VA, I find all of this massively overwhelming. Perfectly understandable. There's a lot of information there, especially in a session like this where it's all coming at you. Do app developers such as Dubsado, Asana, etc., have a legal obligation to state where they use and have used AI so that we can be transparent to our clients?
Yes.
Excellent.
So in the terms and so when you take on a tool, Asana, Dubsado, they all have to comply with GDPR. Now, here's the reason, and I'll try to keep this kind of straightforward, but GDPR is an EU regulation and a UK regulation, right? But there is it's called an extraterritorial. What that means is it doesn't matter where the piece of software is, it doesn't matter where businesses are, if they are targeting a person in the UK or the EU, they must be compliant with GDPR. That's all that means, right? Now, Sana is an American piece of software, so they must be compliant with GDPR. So their privacy notice and their terms of business must tell us as business owners in the UK what they're doing with our data, how they're protecting it. They should be updating, I'm saying should be updating it with what am I doing with AI? They should also be telling you where their data goes. So when I put data into Asana, it doesn't sit on my laptop, it goes to a server. Where is that server? It could be anywhere in the world. They must tell you that. There is an obligation on them under GDPR to be very transparent. All the things I've talked to you about today, ethics, transparency, openness, part of that is about what your privacy notice is that you have on your website that you issue to your clients and say, this is how I look after your data. Asana, Dubsado, Active Campaign, MailerLite, MailChimp, whatever. They all have to meet that obligation. So it's about you taking some time, and it's a joyous, I'm being a bit sarcastic there when I say joyous, but what I used to do when I first started kind of consulting and whatever was I had a bottle of wine on a Friday night and I sat and I read the terms and conditions. Makes it a whole lot easier and a lot more fun.
You got wine, yes.
Because by the time you finish the bottle of wine, the terms and conditions make a lot less notice and you don't care. So, it's a Friday night bit of fun, but maybe that's just me.
One thing I've found helpful is if you're looking for where their servers are stored, rather than sifting through information, ask Google, because that will very often come up with the keywords in their website and it will tell you instantly where their servers are held. But probably as a new VA, probably one of the best things to do is break it down into baby steps.
Yes.
I mean, I
Absolutely.
remember when GDPR came in 2018, it sent the whole industry into a massive panic because everyone was like, "What the hell are we supposed to do?"
Can I just say, oh, sorry, Gwen.
No, go for it.
GDPR came in 2016, but just nobody did anything with it until the deadline of 25th of
That's
May
so true. Yes.
2018.
Yeah.
And also people got very excited about GDPR, but people like me worked with 1984 data protection legislation in the UK. So it is one of these things where we're all getting very excited and very worried about things. Just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if believe me, if I can work through it, you can too. Because I panicked when it all came in. But yeah, I would say break it up into baby steps. Go and have a look at the Coffee Clutch website because it breaks GDPR down into something that is far more easy to understand. Have a chat with Jo if necessary. And if you need to get your privacy policies and contracts in place, we've got an affiliate link with Coffee Clutch, so you can get a bit of money off on that. And I think Catherine's got one too. It doesn't matter who you use, but yeah, just have a look, have a read of things. There's a lot of stuff on HMRC.
Take your time.
Yeah,
To
there's no
reassure
hurry.
you, to reassure you all. I know I've given you an awful lot of content today. The ICO are not going to be knocking on your door today, tomorrow, or next week. Okay? And so long as you can show that you've got a plan, that you are not just putting your head in the sand and ignoring these things, even if they do come in and knock on the door, show that you are thinking about it, that you are making efforts, that, and just go along with that. Okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Don't be
Right.
afraid. You know
Well,
where I am. Drop me a note. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM. If you're really struggling, really worried after this presentation, send me a DM. We can have 15, 20 minutes one-to-one and I can help you. Please, please, please do not, at the end of this presentation, go away feeling anxious, worried, stressed. I can and I will help wherever I can. All right?
absolutely. Yeah. Don't let this worry you.
Yeah.
The
It's not
reason
worth
that
sleepless
we
nights.
yeah, the reason that we've highlighted this, and I wanted to do this as part of the SVA, is simply because there's a lot of information out there that really kind of it shows AI for the wonderful tool it is and how it can help your business. But there are things that we do need to be aware of and that we do need to have in place. And what I don't want is legislation to come in and the industry as a whole to be unprepared for that and to suddenly go into a mass panic about what they need to get in place. So if you're starting to make headway into getting it in your contracts, getting it in your privacy policy, getting an AI statement on your website, you're well on your way to meeting a legislation that's going to be coming in the future.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it will help you to be prepared for that. So
and that's what today has been about, really. It's not necessary to give you the answers. It's just these are some of the things that you need to be thinking about in your business, and how are you doing those things in your business? How are they impacted? What are the changes that you need to think about making? But you don't have to make them all overnight, and you don't have to have all the answers. You just need to be aware and be thinking about it. And in terms of your business processes, where does it fit in? I need to think about this. How am I doing that? What am I doing? Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jo. It's been
very
really helpful, and I've learned stuff too today. So that's really great. So thank you all so much for joining us. I hope we haven't blown your minds, but I hope you found it enjoyable. It is a deep subject, and it's not what everybody finds sexy. I know you do, Jo. But yeah, thank you all very much for joining us. There will be a recording going out, and I'll send those links with that as well. We've got another webinar coming up it's either going to be end of December, early January, and it's going to be regarding bookkeeping and accounting. So our advisory board member, Jo, Michelle Smith is going to be joining us, your Jo. And she's going to be basically doing a bit of a top tips session and answering any questions you might have, because it's coming towards year end for sole traders in January. So if you've got any questions and anything about business, then she is the lady to ask. So we'll get advertising out about that nearer the time. And I hope you enjoy your day. Thank you for joining us, and hope to see you all soon.
Bye, everyone. See you later. See you, Brian.
Thanks, Jo.